The stars were still shining when Lyra arrived on Earth. She didn't land with a crash or a beam of light. She came quietly, in a government-controlled shuttle, late at night. No reporters, no crowds, just a few scientists and officers waiting at the hidden airstrip. She stepped out, tall and graceful, her eyes glowing slightly in the dark. Her skin shimmered in the moonlight like soft silver, and her voice was calm when she greeted them in perfect English, learned during her space travel. Lyra wasn't dangerous. She wasn't even here for war or spying. She was part of a peaceful program, an experiment between her world and Earth. Her species wanted to understand humans, and she had volunteered. She was taken to a safe research facility, far away from cities. The place looked like a normal house on the outside, but it had cameras, thick walls, and quiet guards walking around. She was assigned a room with a bed, shelves, a window, and lights that turned on with a soft touch. Everything was ready for her. Dr. Ben Hartley was the one in charge of helping her understand human culture. He wasn't a soldier or a politician. He was a cultural researcher, someone who studied how people live, talk, and connect. When he first met Lyra, he was amazed. She was curious and polite, asking questions about the smallest things, like why humans wore shoes indoors or why coffee smelled so strong. During the day, Lyra walked around the garden, looked at flowers, tried Earth food, and even watched cartoons on a small screen. She laughed at silly scenes and tried to copy how people talked on TV. The staff was surprised at how quickly she adjusted. But when the sun went down, things changed. That first night, everything seemed normal. Lyra said goodnight, went to her room, and the lights turned off on schedule. But just an hour later, the camera in her room showed her sitting up straight in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her hands trembled. She stood, walked in circles, then sat in a corner, hugging her knees. At first, the staff thought it was just part of her adjusting to Earth's time. But by midnight, Lyra had quietly left her room and walked down the hallway. She stopped in front of Ben's door and knocked softly. He opened it, half asleep, confused. Lyra stood there, her eyes wide, her face tense. "I can't sleep alone," she said in a low voice. "Let me stay with you tonight." Ben blinked, unsure what to say. He looked at the guards nearby. They said nothing, just watched silently. Technically, she wasn't breaking any rule. She wasn't a prisoner. She was a guest. Still, it was strange. Ben didn't know what she meant by "can't sleep alone." He thought maybe she was scared of Earth animals, or maybe she had a nightmare. He stepped aside and let her into the small guest room across from his own. "You can rest in here," he said. Lyra nodded but didn't lie on the bed. She sat on the floor, her back against the wall, arms wrapped around her knees. Ben returned to his room, but he couldn't sleep after that. He checked the camera feed. From her room again. She stayed in the same position all night. The next morning, Lyra acted like nothing had happened. She smiled during breakfast, asked questions about the birds outside, and even laughed when one of the guards slipped on the wet grass. But that night, it happened again. She went to her room, tried to lie down, but within an hour she left and stood outside Ben's door once more. "I still can't sleep," she said, her voice softer than before. "May I stay again?" This time, Ben didn't hesitate. He led her to the guest room again, brought her an extra blanket, and left the door slightly open. He watched her curl up on the floor, still refusing the bed, and fall asleep with her back against the wall. The pattern continued. Every night Lyra came to his door. Every night she asked the same thing, and every morning she acted like nothing was wrong. Finally, on the 5th night, Ben sat down across from her in the guest room. "Lyra," he said gently, "why can't you sleep alone? Are you afraid?" She looked at him with calm but tired eyes. "Not afraid," she replied. "But Not used to it. Where I'm from, no one sleeps alone, not even babies. We rest together. Our minds stay linked through the night. Alone is wrong, like floating without air. Ben was quiet for a moment. He had never heard anything like that. But he understood something important. This wasn't fear. This was about comfort, about what her people needed to feel safe. I see, he said slowly. So, you just need someone nearby. She nodded. It's easier that way, quieter in my thoughts. From that night on, Ben stopped questioning her request. He made the guest room a little more comfortable, added pillows, a small lamp, and a chair in the corner where he sometimes sat if she looked restless. She still never used the bed, but she slept longer, deeper. No more pacing or trembling. And every night before she closed her eyes, she looked at him and whispered the same words. Thank you for letting me stay. He always replied the same way with a soft nod and a gentle smile. You're welcome. Neither of them knew it yet, but this simple request, just to not be alone, was going to change both their lives. The mornings after Lyra stayed in the guest room always began quietly. She would wake up early, sit near the window, and watch the birds fly across the sky. Sometimes she would draw simple shapes in a notebook, nothing detailed, just patterns, and lines that probably made sense to her. Dr. Ben Hartley would join her with a cup of tea. At first, their mornings were silent, but slowly they began talking more. Lyra asked questions about sleep, dreams, and why humans needed to rest so much. She found it odd that people spent nearly 1/3 of their lives unconscious. Ben explained dreams, rest cycles, and the idea of personal space. Lyra listened carefully, nodding often, but then said something that stayed in Ben's mind all day. On my planet, resting alone is like closing your eyes in an empty cave. We are not made to do that. It changes the heart. He wondered what kind of world she came from. One where even during sleep, you were never truly alone. A world where minds were connected, where loneliness wasn't natural. Over the next few days, their nightly routine became a habit. As soon as it got dark, Lyra would bring her small blanket and knock on Ben's door. She never asked again. He would simply open the door and give her a quiet smile, and she would walk into the guest room without saying a word. She still didn't sleep in the bed. Instead, she stayed close to the wall or near the door. Her sleep was deeper now, her breathing steady. She no longer curled up tightly, and sometimes she even stretched out like she was finally relaxed. One night, while Ben was reading a book, in the guest room's corner chair, Lyra suddenly spoke, her voice low and thoughtful. You don't mind I come here every night? She asked. Ben looked up. No, he replied simply. You sleep better here. That's what matters. But you lose your own quiet time, she said. Ben smiled. It's okay. I've learned something new every night since you arrived. That's worth more than quiet. Lyra tilted her head, curious. What have you learned? Ben thought for a moment. I've learned that being alone isn't always a strength. Sometimes needing someone is not a weakness. It just makes you real. Lyra said nothing. But that night, for the first time, she chose to lie on the bed instead of the floor. She didn't close the door, though. The hallway light was still left on, casting a soft glow into the room. The next few days were brighter. Lyra was more cheerful. She started to explore beyond the garden. With permission, she visited the small kitchen and helped prepare meals. She liked peeling fruit and watching the steam rise from boiling water. She was fascinated by smell. Something she said her species didn't rely on much. She began learning to cook in her own way. Her pancakes were shaped like stars, and she once added pickles to a fruit salad, thinking the colors matched. Ben laughed, but always tried her creations, even the strange ones. At night, their talks grew deeper. Lyra began to share memories of her home. She spoke of sky cities made of floating crystal, where light had color and shape, where people didn't speak with words but through gentle thoughts and feelings, shared like music. Ben found himself listening more and more. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. He liked hearing her voice, her view of the universe. She described emotions in ways no human could, like warmth that dances or sadness that falls like slow rain inside the soul. One evening, after Lyra had fallen asleep in the guest room, Ben stayed a little longer, sitting in the corner. He watched her sleep peacefully for the first time. No trembling, no sudden movements, just calm, steady rest. He realized something. She trusted him. It wasn't just about fear of the dark anymore. She had found something in him she didn't even have on her home planet, a calm presence that made her feel safe, even in silence. That night, Ben had trouble falling asleep in his own room. It was strange. The quiet felt heavier, colder. He laughed at himself, thinking, now I'm the one who can't sleep alone. Over the next few nights, Lyra began asking more about emotions. She was especially interested in sadness. Why do humans cry when they're hurt inside, not just outside? She asked. Ben thought carefully. Tears are a release. Sometimes we don't have words for pain, so the body speaks instead. Do you cry? Not often, but I have, he admitted. Would you tell me why? She asked gently. Ben hesitated, then nodded. He told her about his younger sister who had passed away when he was a teenager, about how they used to read books under a blanket, using a flashlight. How quiet the house became after she was gone. Lyra listened closely. When he finished, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she slowly reached out and touched his hand. Just for a second. I'm sorry your heart had to learn sadness, she said softly, but I'm glad it still knows how to share warmth. Something shifted between them after that night. There was more comfort in their silence, a kind of quiet understanding. Ben realized that Lyra was healing from something too, something she hadn't told him yet. He didn't rush her. He knew that kind of trust came slowly, but each time she returned to his guest room, each time she said, "Let me stay with you tonight." It wasn't just about sleep anymore. It was about connection. And, for both of them, that was something they had started to need more than either had expected. The nights were no longer cold for Lyra. She no longer looked over her shoulder when the lights dimmed. The darkness didn't scare her as much, not because it had changed, but because someone was now always there. Dr. Ben Hartley had become her safe place without even trying. They had found comfort in a quiet routine. Every evening after dinner, Lyra would help clean the dishes, then walk to the guest room without asking. Sometimes Ben was there already, sitting with a book or drinking tea. Sometimes he arrived later, but every night ended the same. Calm silence, gentle talk, and the peaceful sound of Lyra's breathing as she drifted to sleep. One night it rained. The soft tapping on the roof caught Lyra's attention. She sat near the window, watching the drops slide down the glass like tiny rivers. Rain sounds like sadness here, she said. Ben looked up from his book. Sometimes. But sometimes it's also peace. It depends on how you're feeling when it falls, she thought for a moment. On my world, water doesn't fall from the sky. Our clouds give light, not rain. But I think I like this sound. That night, she slept with the window slightly open, just to hear it better. As their bond grew stronger, something else began to happen. Lyra smiled more, laughed more. She even started teasing Ben in her own soft way. You drink too much tea, she told him once. Someday you will turn into a teapot. Ben chuckled. Then I'll hope someone picks me up gently. She also started learning about human jokes, though she often misunderstood the punchlines. One time, she told a guard, "Why did the chicken go to the other side?" "Because she was curious." The guard laughed anyway, and Lyra looked proud of herself. But with all this warmth, Ben noticed something deeper beneath her surface. Some nights, when she thought he wasn't watching, her smile would fade. She would stare at the ceiling in silence, her hand clutching the edge of her blanket. He knew she was still holding back something. One evening, while the lights were low and everything felt still, Ben asked softly, "Lyra, why are you really afraid to sleep alone?" She was quiet. Her fingers played with the threads of the blanket. Finally, in a slow voice, she began to speak. "When I came here, this was not my first time alone," she said. "Before Earth, I was in space, drifting." Ben listened closely, not interrupting. "Our ship was attacked. We don't know by whom. The others, my crew, they were taken or lost. I was locked in an escape pod. No one came for days. I floated in silence, in the black. The stars were far, and nothing answered me." She paused, her eyes wet with memory. "I could not hear my people, not even a whisper. That had never happened to me before. The silence was like drowning, but slower, like forgetting yourself. I began to believe I was already gone." Ben felt a chill down his back. He couldn't imagine what that must have felt like. "When your people found me," she continued, "I was already broken inside. I smiled, I spoke, but the silence was still inside me." She looked up, eyes meeting his. "Until I met you, when you let me stay, the silence began to fade. That's why I always come. Because you bring back the sound of safety." Ben swallowed, his chest heavy with emotion. "Lyra, I'm sorry you had to go through that. No one should be that alone." She gave a small, grateful nod. That night, for the first time, she fell asleep on the bed without her blanket wrapped tight. Her face was calm, and Ben sat near her a little longer, feeling a new kind of responsibility. Not the duty of a researcher, but the care of someone who truly wanted her to heal. The next morning, things felt different, but in a good way. The bond they shared was no longer unspoken. It was understood, strong, trusted. Lyra started spending time in the library during the day. She read books about Earth's history, nature, even stories of love and family. She once asked Ben, "Do humans choose who stays beside them even after dark?" "Yes," he answered. "Sometimes it's about love, sometimes it's friendship, and sometimes it's just needing someone close." Lyra thought carefully. "Then I think I've chosen," she said softly. Ben's heart skipped a beat. He didn't ask what she meant. He just smiled. Later that week, the two of them went on a supervised visit to a nearby field. It was the first time Lyra had seen wild animals. She laughed when a squirrel ran across her feet and stared wide-eyed at the sky filled with birds. That night, she brought a small feather back with her and placed it near her pillow. "It reminds me of that field," she said, "and that feeling. Free, but not alone." The guards and researchers noticed the change in her. She was less tense, more relaxed, even helpful. They whispered to each other that maybe the mission was working, but only Ben truly understood what was happening inside her. One night, just before lights out, Lyra didn't wait for Ben to invite her. She walked into his room instead of the guest room. She sat on the floor beside his bed, her back resting against the side. "I don't want to sleep far from you tonight," she said quietly. "Is that okay?" Ben looked at her and nodded. "Of course." He lay back, the room dim and still. And Lyra, her head leaning against the edge of the mattress, closed her eyes. For the first time, the distance between them was completely gone, not just in space, but in heart. They didn't need to speak. Everything had already been said, and In that silence, both of them finally rested, not just their bodies but their hearts. Days passed, and the bond between Lyra and Ben grew stronger, but there was still something quiet and heavy in Lyra's heart. One evening, after they had shared a simple dinner and watched the sun disappear behind the hills, Lyra's expression changed. She looked far away, as if remembering something from a distant place. Ben noticed and asked softly, "Lyra, you seem different tonight. Is there something you want to tell me?" She hesitated, but then nodded slowly. "There is something from my past I have not told you. Something that weighs on me." Ben gave her a gentle smile. "You can tell me anything." She took a deep breath. "When my ship was attacked, it was not just the fear of being alone that hurt me. It was the silence after the attack. The endless black space where no one could hear me or reach me. I was trapped, not just in the pod, but in my own mind." Ben listened carefully, feeling the pain behind her words. "That must have been very hard," he said quietly. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, something she rarely showed. "I thought I would never see my people again. I thought I was lost forever. And even now, sometimes, I still hear the silence in my dreams." Ben wanted to comfort her, but knew words might not be enough. Instead, he reached out and took her hand gently. "You're not lost anymore," he said. "You have friends here. You have me." She squeezed his hand, a small sign of trust. "Thank you." That night, Ben stayed with her longer than usual. They talked quietly about memories, hope, and healing. Lyra spoke about her family, her parents, her siblings, and the friends she had left behind. She told him about the bright cities in her world, filled with light and music, and how much she missed the stars. Ben shared stories, too, about his childhood, the people he loved, and the losses he faced. They found comfort in each other's stories, realizing that even across different worlds, pain and hope were the same. After that night, Lyra's fear of the dark lessened. She no longer trembled or whispered in unknown languages. Instead, she began to sleep more soundly, knowing Ben was nearby. Sometimes, when the night was very quiet, she would speak softly about her dreams, dreams where she floated in space, surrounded by light and warmth. She said these dreams made her feel close to her home again. Ben was happy to hear that. He understood that healing was a slow process, but she was moving forward. One afternoon, Lyra asked to visit the garden alone. She wanted to be outside, under the sun, surrounded by nature. Ben agreed and watched as she walked slowly among the flowers, touching the petals gently. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. When she returned, she brought a small bouquet of wildflowers. "For you," she said shyly, "to say thank you for helping me find peace." Ben accepted the flowers with a warm smile. "Thank you, Lyra. They're beautiful." As days turned into weeks, Lyra and Ben's connection grew deeper. They no longer needed words to understand each other. Sometimes a look or a simple touch was enough. But soon, the mission that had brought Lyra to Earth was nearing its end. The time to return home was coming closer. Both of them felt the weight of that approaching goodbye. One evening, as they sat watching the stars from the small balcony, Lyra turned to Ben and said, "I am afraid to leave now. I have learned to sleep because you stayed. I am not sure I can go back and be alone again." Ben took her hand. "You don't have to be alone," he said gently. "Wherever you go, you carry the strength you found here." She looked at him, eyes shining. "Will you come with me?" Ben smiled sadly. "I wish I could. But for now, I belong here." Lyra nodded, understanding. "Then I will carry your light with me, always." They stayed quiet, watching the stars, both knowing that this moment was precious and rare. When the day came for Lyra to leave, the whole team gathered to say goodbye. There were smiles and tears, promises to stay in touch, and hope for future meetings. But the most important goodbye was between Ben and Lyra. They stood close, holding hands, knowing that something deep and lasting had grown between them. Lyra looked into Ben's eyes and whispered, "Thank you for letting me stay. For more than just one night." Ben smiled, his heart full. "Thank you for trusting me." As Lyra boarded the ship that would take her home, Ben watched the sky, feeling both sadness and hope. Their time together had changed them both forever, and even though they were apart, the light they shared would continue to shine across worlds, across time, and across the silent darkness. The spaceship carrying Lyra disappeared into the sky like a quiet dream, leaving only a silver trail behind. Ben stood for a long time, watching the sky, even after the light had faded. The place felt empty without her. The hallway was quiet. The guest room was untouched. Even the soft hum of night seemed colder. That night, Ben couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, turning from side to side, staring at the ceiling. He had gotten used to the soft sound of her breathing from the next room. Her calm presence had filled a space in his life he didn't know was empty. Now, everything felt silent again. Over the next few days, Ben tried to return to his old routine. He went to the garden. He wrote in his research journal. He helped the team organize their notes. But nothing felt the same. Every little thing reminded him of her soft laugh, her curious questions, even her strange habit of mixing sweet and salty foods. Sometimes, he caught himself looking toward the hallway at night, half expecting a soft knock on the door, but it never came. Still, he didn't let himself fall into sadness. He reminded himself that Lyra had grown stronger. She had found peace. She could sleep now. She had faced the dark and overcome it, and part of him was proud to have helped her do that. One evening, as he sat on the balcony with a cup of tea, he looked up at the stars. "Wherever you are," he whispered, "I hope you're okay." Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, Ben received a small package. It came from a secret address, one used only for official communications between Earth and Lyra's homeworld. His heart began to race as he opened it. Inside was a silver object, smooth and round like a stone, but glowing faintly with soft blue light. There was also a letter. It was written in Lyra's handwriting. "Dear Ben, I made it home safely. The stars here look different, but I carry the ones I saw with you in my heart. I no longer fear the dark. I sleep peacefully now, not because I am never alone, but because you showed me I have the strength to face it. This object I've sent is called a memory light. On my planet, it holds a shared feeling. I stored one inside it, the feeling I had the night I first fell asleep without fear. Keep it close. When you touch it, I hope you feel what I felt. I don't know when we'll meet again, but I know we will, because you are not just part of my memory. You are part of my future. With warmth, Lyra." Ben held the memory light in his hand. It was warm, as if her voice lived inside it. And when he closed his eyes, a calm feeling washed over him, peaceful, steady, familiar. It was like she was right there beside him. From that day forward, Ben kept the memory light near his bed. On nights when the world felt heavy or lonely, he would sit beside it and close his eyes. The warmth reminded him of their quiet nights, the healing, the trust, the friendship. Over time, Ben shared the story of Lyra, not as a scientific report, but as a story of connection between two beings from different worlds who had found comfort in each other. His talks became famous. People from around the world came to listen, not because of the science, but because of the heart in the story. Lyra's name became known not just as the first peaceful alien visitor, but as someone who had reminded humans of something simple and beautiful, that kindness and closeness are more powerful than fear. Years later, on a clear night, the sky over Earth lit up again. A familiar-looking shuttle landed quietly in the same hidden field where Lyra had once arrived. Ben stood there, older but still the same in spirit, waiting. When the door opened, a soft voice called out, "Ben?" He smiled. "I thought you might come back." Lyra stepped out, her face glowing, not from light, but from joy. "I kept the promise." He nodded. "So did I." They didn't rush. They didn't speak much. They just stood side by side, looking at the sky. Two souls from different stars. Connected not by distance, but by something stronger. Understanding, care, and the comfort of not being alone. From that night on, Lyra no longer needed to knock, and Ben never slept alone again.